Zitkovich property. And John Zitkovich right here is the grandson. He will tell us a little bit about this home.
I could add to the story a little. A lot of it's the same as what Frank has said. My grandparents arrived here from Yugoslavia. There's a little story to that, I'll tell you later, but in the early 1900s, my dad was born here in the back of the grocery store, which was common, 1916, and I was born in 42. So as a kid in the 40s and 50s, I was running the neighborhood here, and as my grandparents lived here at that time. So, and I remember then in the 50s, which was a little later than what Frank was describing about the winemaking and the commercial fishing. So we had a purse seiner that was parked right here in the river underneath the bridge. And I remember through this garage, there's a door that you could access into the basement. And the basement was a particularly high ceiling. So the net making and repair work was done in the winter time to prepare for the season in the summer, and they could pull the nets out and on a back of a pickup truck or a wagon, take them over to the boat and load them, or to the net shed. So I remember that going on there before machinery was around and available to make these nets. A lot of it was done by hand. Then in the fall, in the winemaking season, I remember, you know, the train that Frank mentioned would come. They would get 100 boxes of grapes. They were hauled in there and mashed and put in barrels and fermented. And I remember the compressor machine to compress the last little drop out of all that mash. Then the barrels are set aside and stored. So I remember that as a kid. You know, now we didn't do it by hand and by boots and stomp on the grapes. We had kind of a washing machine that was had interlocking cogs that we dumped the grapes into, and then a heavy-duty drill would just turn that around and mash them up and fold up. So I remember that. But there's one particular little story I wanted to bring out to add to this whole neighborhood of this, and that is, you know, I didn't pay attention at the time when I was young, but now in reflecting, my grandmother was a mail order bride from Yugoslavia, and as I back up the story and think about it, my grandfather arrived here, typically of the immigrants, the opportunity to be here, and in the commercial fishing industry, early 1900s. So the purse seine boat was developed, like we saw on the outline there, it was 65 feet long. And how did my grandmother get here to marry my grandfather? They never met, and maybe it was early 1900s, so you just didn't fly back and forth and chit-chat. So maybe there were some pictures, maybe some letters, but I think what was highly in the community and this group of people was recommendations. Oh, you should get to know Helen. John, it was my grandfather's name. You should get to know Helen. Helen would be a great bride for you. And so they probably communicated by letter, but you know, telephone, I don't know. But she traveled clear across the Atlantic Ocean by steamship, took a long, long time, and then clear across all the states of the United States by train. It took months to get here, and had never met my grandfather in person, never spoke in person that I know of. Married, had a family, wonderful family. I'm so proud of the family I came from. So that was the mail order bride aspect. I think that really happened. I heard talk about it. I put the story together, and that's what I came up with. No chance to say, hey, this is not going to work out, and hop an airplane and go back to Yugoslavia. It was all steamship and by rail, see, so. Oh yeah, but yeah, now that's Belosic, you're right, for the name. The name is Zitkovich for here. So we have pavers there for the commercial fishing boat and the location on the street here. So that's added to the story.
A little story that goes along with it. Just here about a year and a half ago, I received a telephone call from a fellow up in Anchorage, Alaska. And The wife here